Why is the idea of a female in a male's body a transgender accepted, but the idea of a black person in a white person's body, Rachel Dolezal, isn't? There have been studies done on dead transgender people that demonstrate that trans people have differing brain structures. A trans woman's brain will have many, but not all, of the features that a cisgender woman's brain has. The same goes for trans men. There is no such evidence for transracial people, as that's not really a thing. Race is much more of an artificial concept than gender, and has little biological basis. Black people are not of a different race than white people, they simply have different genetic traits that are well within the boundary for counting as the same species. I would say this is a bad answer. Unless I misunderstand OP, they're not asking why we should accept transgender people and not transracial people, they're asking why we, or at least most modern American liberals, do. The former is an ethical question, the latter is a sociological question that could probably be answered by looking at the history of social justice movements in the US. I doubt the answer has much to do with putative brain differences. A start at an answer is that groups that fight for women's rights have been chipping away at the idea that people should have to perform gender roles they don't identify with for some time. This process has been aided by the incorporation of women into the workforce and other larger social trends. By contrast, advocates for racial justice have sometimes struggled to create a strong sense of a positive black identity. A white woman trying to pass as black stirs memories of disrespectful portrayals such as blackface, even though the two phenomena are really quite different, and some black people may have worried her portrayal of blackness was almost a caricature. Black people face unwanted prejudice in the US. When Rachel Dolezal passed as black, she may have experienced racism, but only because she chose to. Black identity is partially built on surviving shared experiences of oppression that some felt Dolezal was claiming unfairly to have withstood. Someone with expertise could give a better answer. These are just my thoughts. I should note that personally I have no problem with people choosing to identify with a certain gender or ethnicity as long as it is done respectfully and sincerely. However, I don't think ethnicity is just a matter of self-identification, and changing your body to fit in with a different race is obviously a complex issue. A random weeaboo isn't Japanese. I have no problem thinking of someone who's spent years in Japan and tried to adopt the culture as in many ways an honorary Japanese. However, if they tried to modify their eyes and skin color, I would question their motivation, although perhaps I could come around. The same goes for African Americans. Brain regions can be considered masculinized or feminized depending on their response to sex hormones. Look up the preoptic area for a well-studied example of this. There's no such thing as a race hormone that can blacken or whiten brain regions. However, I would like to modify this question to, let's say, if we find a person that is a 100% male and wants to become a female, not possessing a different brain structure. We would still accept that as we would for a transgender person who wants to have a sex change. So why would a person wanting to change race get criticized, mocked, and shamed? In this regard, both are relating to an artificial concept of what it means to be an individual that don't fit with what is considered as the norm based on physical appearance. I think this answer is nonsense. First, let's dismiss our obsession with brain differences. Any thought or behavior is instantiated in the brain, and thus if you have a different thought or behavior from someone else, then you have a different brain. So simply finding a brain difference between people that we know to be psychologically or behaviorally different is nothing special, it just says that our measurement abilities are strong enough to pick up on that particular brain difference. For example, suppose, quite plausibly, that regularly wearing heels required more development in the balance sections of the brain, then if you looked at the brains of regularly heels-wearing people after they died, they would have systematically different brains from those that didn't. Does that give us an argument for some sort of heels essentialism? What about when a taxi driver has a more developed spatial reasoning or a violinist an expanded mapping of their hand in the brain? Are those arguments for some sort of taxi driver essentialism or violinist essentialism? What actually matters is not some sort of biology or genetics or other science nonsense, although those can be fun to know. What matters is that there is a marked regularity in behavior. A lot of people say they feel they are a different gender and say it consistently and do drastic actions that show the sincerity of their belief. That is why we should respect their statements and identities, not because of some underlying biology. We should not hold biology above consistent self-report by many people. This also helps explain why we accept the transgender identity but not Dolezal's transrace identity. It becomes a matter of how many people attest to that identity and how much we trust those people's self-reports. In the case of Dolezal, it becomes a single person who seems to be doing it for gain, so we have reasons to discount her self-report as self-serving instead of genuine. However, if lots of people came forward with reports like Dolezal, endured great hardships in the name of those reports, and started to form a community, then we would start to recognize it in a way similar to how we recognize transgender.